It was the first monthly title that I ever did. And that happened in that, I think, 77. I think somebody just up and left the company. I was nervous, and it was because my father was working up the office, and it was a monthly title, and I hadn't considered ever doing Iron Man when I was up as a young artist. I thought about Spider-Man and that type of character, Daredevil. Never thought about doing Iron Man. And it was a different type of a character to me, because I always had that problem with the logistics, the armor. Oh my God, it's flexible armor. I had this close-minded, that's impossible. It's got to be hinges somewhere, joints. It didn't make sense. And you suspend belief for the character, and then I began to really enjoy it. And then it blossomed into more than what it was, because it became a melodrama as well as a great visual. And then, of course, he had his personal problems, the demons, and it became more than the simplistic armor to save the heart type of character. Okay, this is the very first complete comic I ever did. And I've been told that over the last 30 years that it is the #1 book to line bird cages with, because of this great spot right here, right above, right below the little perch, right there. Getting the first one done was probably as good a feeling as I've ever had in anything, because it's like climbing your first mountain, hitting your first home run.
I was very young, just right out of high school, basically. Probably the youngest guy in the history of Marvel at the time. I mean, there have been younger guys since then. I think I was 19. So getting your foot in the door as a young guy was almost impossible. I mean, Barry Smith had to, break down a ton of barriers. He's Barry frickin' Smith, One of the greatest artists in the history of comics, in my opinion. But even for him, it wasn't easy. And that's where I met David Michelinie. Dave was always open immediately for me to be involved in helping create the stories. He appreciated what I had to offer, even though I was just the lowly inker. And I started talking to him about Iron Man, which was, from the time I was a kid, this was the character that I wanted to do. I have always been a science buff. So with Iron Man, it was kind of that way. I always said that if you can believe that the suit works, everything else will work. All you got to do is make the suit look believable. Make it look like it functions. And that was really my idea going in, was make the suit look functional. Looking at Iron Man and saying, okay, parts of him are organic, parts of him are not. So I just started inking him that way. In terms of approaching Iron Man, it was always just making it believable to me. I mean, people talk about, that whole Doctor Doom story, the first Camelot thing. I had always argued that Doctor Doom should have been the Iron Man villain, not, the Fantastic. I know he's belongs to the Fantastic Four, but if there ever was a character who was the antithesis of Tony Stark, it was Doctor Doom. They were the same guy on two sides of the coin. He was, both monarchs, both highly educated, both very sophisticated guys. Never were there two characters meant to fight each other in the history of comic books than Doctor Doom and Iron Man, And the fact that they maintained a mutual respect for each other, even though they hated what the other person stood for. What makes Tony Stark different than everyone else in the Marvel Universe, and it's the world that he lives in, that he operates in. The corporate structure, the world of high finance, the world of industrial exploration. The fact that he was a scientist who made money off what he did. And that's really all we tried to do with that, was we put characters around Tony. Each one of them served a purpose, served a different side of Tony.
We'll drop in Jim Rhodes. He's a pilot, and then we'll start delving into his backstory. And he was the guy that Tony met when he was, in Southeast East Asia, having just become Iron Man, who helped him get back to the States.
Rhodey was that confidant, the guy that he could trust with his life. The guy that had his back all the time, And Beth was obviously the person who took care of him emotionally. Here's Tony Stark's day. He comes in, Mrs. Arbogast hands him a piece of paper, he signs it. A factory goes up in New Jersey. She comes in, hands him a piece of paper, he signs it, a satellite gets built. Another piece of paper, signs it, they close a factory in Guatemala. 10,000 people are out of jobs. He designs something. He goes to his drawing board, designs something. It's sent down to the technical crew or whatever, to the technicians. They build it, they do all that kind of stuff. Sales and manufacturing go to it. He never sees the damn thing until it's in orbit. Who could really live that way? It's a different set of problems, a different track, a different things like that. And that was one of the things that I thought about with Iron Man. This is the only character I think you could really do that with, where you start thinking about alterations in the design to fit specific needs and tasks. I believe the stealth armor was the first, but you know, Dave and I had already discussed several different options: the space armor and the undersea armor, and so forth and so on.